Good morning. We're now going to call this meeting to order. In order to do so, I need to determine a quorum. Since we're all doing this remotely and calling in, I will go around and call each board member. If you would just say here. Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. George?
Here.
Ms. Burns? Here. Mr. Hall?
Here.
And myself, Cindy Fontana. I can now call this meeting to order. At this time, we need to approve the agenda as presented. I need a board member to please make the motion.
I make a motion that we approve the agenda as presented.
Ms. Burns has made the motion. Do we have a second?
Second the motion.
Mr. Smith is seconding the motion. All in favor? Once again, I'll go around and ask. Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
And Ms. Burns?
Yes.
All right. At this time, we're now moving into the consent agenda part of the meeting. Board members, you've had time to look over the item concerning 3.1 literacy take-home books. At this time, I'm asking for a motion to approve as presented.
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Ms. Burns has made the motion. We need a second.
Second.
Mr. Hall is seconded. All in favor? Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yeah.
And Ms. Burns?
Yes.
All right, so moved. At this time, we're now moving into the action part of our agenda. Talking about 4.1 Edgenuity contract. Dr. Akins, we asked for this to be put under action, so I think there could be some discussion. Mr. George, did you want to start this, or Dr. Aiken, if you want to talk about this a little bit more?
I'm certainly fine to answer any questions. Essentially, our 612 program has proved to be far more popular than we anticipated, and we've had very few requests to leave. We were working to try to meet the demand. We had a late push right before the end of the first week of September. We've had less than 5 of our 6th through 12th grade students have made a request to return at this point. And we have certainly worked to make sure that all of our parents could use Edgenuity if that was the platform they preferred. We do have some students that had prior successful experiences with Ed Options, but we gave any parent the choice if they wanted to move to Edgenuity. We did have a small handful, about 5 students that sought to go with Edgenuity. Our initial purchase, we utilized textbook funds because we didn't want to put anything at that point under our ESSER 3 plan because it hadn't technically been approved at that point. It was approved by the state a few weeks later. And so we would like to be able to go with add an additional 25 slots to our Edgenuity program to try to meet some of the demand, allow the students to stay on the platforms that they're successful with, and then seeking to use some of the cost savings that we've had with our Pender Innovative Learning Academy budget, specifically the positions that unfortunately we are still searching for and posting and trying to hire that now, unfortunately, going into the first week of December, we're still trying to interview and hire for. And then using some of the money that we had set aside for the elementary program that based on our intent survey and responses, we believe we have somewhere around 40 to 45 students that will be returning to in-person learning out of right around 100. So seeking to use some of those leftover funds to pay for the additional 25 slots with Edgenuity.
Board members, any questions?
So my question is, for Pender Innovative, the best I can figure, we spent about a little over $3 million total getting that up and running. Does that sound about right?
I'd have to double check the math. Or ideally, if we had hired all of our staff, the goal was over the 3 years we had budgeted $1.83 million, so approximately $610,000 a year. Again, unfortunately, 1, 2, 3. We still have 4 vacancies that we've been working to hire. The elementary aspect, we only budgeted for 1 year at this point. We had budgeted $300,000, but to this point we have spent $164,000, and we know again roughly half of the students that are currently on it are not planning on coming back. So I believe we will end up somewhere around $225,000 to $250,000 for the elementary part. We have not actually so far for the 6-12 part. We spent $353,000 out of textbooks. So this year, yes, sir, I would say probably right around the 1 million mark. And then so over the 3 years that we're looking to use the ESSERs, it would be about 3 million. Yes, sir.
So the best I could figure out, looking at the sheet Betsy sent out earlier with the ESSER funds, what had been earmarked for what? That's about $3.6 million that we've got wrapped up with facilities and programs.
Yes, sir. I not included that.
And there's been a lot of questions in the community about what we've used our ESSER funds for. So at 135 students, that would be about $29,000 per student. What is our per student spending for regular brick and mortar students?
I'll defer to others for that. I will say Pender Innovative's total enrollment is right around 300. That includes all of the K-12 online plus the in-person students. So right now in Power School, we have right at 301 students enrolled. I will pass to others as far as the brick and mortar.
Mr. George, normally a typical traditional student is somewhere between $8,000 and $10,000, but if you were to look at special situations across the board, we have spent up to $100,000 on certain students and their education process. All depends on the requirements of the law, and that does not include the brick and mortar. That's every year their education services.
Right, I understand there's those circumstances, but there's not that many of them. I would rather just cap it at 110 for this year. I'm not interested, and because we're going to have to find funding for this after ESSER's money runs out, and even at 300 students, that's $12,000 a year for students that's supposedly virtual that we've got wrapped up in it right now. I'm not in favor of upping it, spending the $80,000 at this time.
If it does help, Mr. George, we do have, I had not sought textbook funds for Pender Innovative, but that certainly could be another option. We currently have another 35 students beyond these that have sought interest. We did cap it at that point because we were really running out of the ability to truly meet their needs. But if that would be a better option, that's certainly something that we would follow through for the board.
I mean, it's become very difficult to explain, and granted, we didn't get as much money as surrounding counties, as some surrounding counties. But when you have surrounding counties that are giving bonuses and offering increases in wage, and then when we get asked what we've done, well, we've spent $3 million for virtual students, it kind of leaves a bad taste in people's mouth. We've invested our money different than others have. So if the state money's there that we know we're not going to need in some other place, I'm for it, but not using ESSER's funds at this time.
I certainly understand.
That's my opinion. I mean, I'm only one of five.
Yes, sir. No, I do understand. I definitely want the board to know that I think, I know last year, especially in the middle school, virtual learning experience left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. But I do want the board to know we have had, I think, a very different year, even with 2 new vendors and finishing up the last vendor from last year. We've had a lot of positive comments. I think I'm glad to know that and I do appreciate the board giving us some flexibility, especially with the elementary. I think that has really proven to meet the needs of a lot of people. The 612 program has certainly been, I think, very successful at this point. But I would totally understand looking at using the state money instead and providing some later options for the ESSERs if that kind of gives the board some flexibility. Completely understand.
So Dr. Akins, you can make that happen? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, ma'am. Luckily, I guess I'm a bit of a miser when it comes to our textbook funds and try not to spend it until we need situations like this. So at last check, we had funds in our state textbook allotment that would completely cover this.
Other board members, what are your thoughts?
Hi, this is Beth Burns. I'm a supporter of TILA, and but I do have to say, $80,000 right now. I have to agree with Mr. George. I believe that there are other ways that we could spend that $80,000, especially if you have that money in a textbook fund that you can use for this. But honestly, what concerns me is the fact that we are going to need 4 more positions for this. And as of right now, we don't have them. So I'm a little conflicted right now as to whether we should buy these extra seats or not.
Well, if you take it out sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to make sure that if I wasn't clear, the positions that we had originally posted for PILA that we've not been able to fill were ones that we wanted to be able to utilize for our STAR Academy and day treatment work. We have not fully enrolled either of those because of the hiring challenges that we have run into. The virtual part is being handled through Ms. Winstead and the current staff that she has, and of course, quite frankly, the staff that these companies have. And that's one way we've been able to serve more than we would have anticipated because the companies have done a pretty good job. The savings that I was looking at using were just those from the months of employment that unfortunately we've not been able to find the right people. But those unused positions are really directed at the in-person learning programs that we are trying to get running through the day treatment and the STAR programs. But right now we just have not been able to find the people that we would want to put in the school.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hall, Mr. Smith, do you have anything?
Nope. No, I'm fine.
All right. So I guess the question now is for Mr. McPherson. So if we're looking at changing where the money would come from, how do we make this a motion? What do we have to do?
So the easiest way to do that is for the maker of the motion to indicate that they would like to use other available state funds to fund this contract. amendment.
Okay.
Does that make sense to everybody?
It does make sense.
Okay.
Other board members, does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to make explicit that it will not be Esther's money, you can do that too. But with the, the specific provision that it'll be used, but state money as opposed to Esther's money is the way to make the motion.
Okay. All right,
Mr.
so
McPherson,
again,
do I need to say that, or is you saying it's sufficient?
I think you've already said it, Dr. Aiken, but the maker of the motion, if they will indicate that that's their intent when they make the motion, that way all board members are clear about what the motion is. Additionally, as a reminder, if you're speaking, make sure to identify yourself. And you guys have done a great job of that. So just wanted to point that out. Thanks.
all right. So at this time, board members, do we have anyone who would like to make that motion?
I would like to make a motion to approve Edgenuity contract for 25 additional seats using state funds and not Esther's funds. Mr. McPherson, is that all right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So Ms. Burns has made the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Hall is seconding. I'll now go around and ask all in favor. Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Ms. Burns?
Yes.
All right, so carried. Thank you. At this time, we now need to move into item 4.2, which is district masking protocols. And just so the public is aware, this is something that we are required to do by the governor's office every single month. So since it is the last day of the month, we are now meeting so that we can do that. So at this time, board members, I'm opening up. Who would like to make a motion regarding district masking protocols?
This is Mr. Smith. I make a motion to continue to make masks optional in Pender County schools.
Mr. Smith has made the motion to keep masks optional. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Burns has seconded. All in favor, and once again, I'll go around the room. Mr. Hall?
Yeah.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Ms. Burns?
Yes.
And who did I miss? Mr. Smith, did you vote?
Yes.
Okay. All right. This time, so carried. Masks remain optional at this time. At this time, it looks like we have listed closed session. Are we needing to go into closed session at this time?
I'm not aware of a reason, Madam Chair. This is Mr. McPherson.
Any board members or anything? Dr. Hill?
Madam Chair, this is Ken Smith. I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Okay. Mr. Smith has made the motion that we adjourn. Do we have a second?
I'll second. Mr. George.
Mr. George is seconding. All in favor. Ms. Burns?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yeah.
And Mr. George?
Yes.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.